So about 7 years ago or so, I started to lose my hearing, and I had no idea why. Now at the time, I figured it was probably due to playing in bands because I was singing in bands at the time, and I hated the way that it sounded with earplugs in my ear, so I wouldn't wear earplugs. So I just kind of figured that's what it was because a lot of my bandmates were like, "Yeah, we're all going deaf," but my hearing was getting really bad to the point where I wasn't able to. I started not being able to understand people well. So after I got back from tour one year is when I really noticed that it was actually starting to get really bad to the point where it was hard to communicate with people. And over and over and over, I'd be saying, huh, huh, to people. And over time, like everybody started making the same joke. They started saying, I know what I'm getting you for Christmas next year, hearing aids, ha, 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 ha. Everybody be saying that over and over and over. And, you know, they thought that they were funny and original, but in reality, they weren't. So anyways, I remember saying to myself, I was like, I will be deaf before I wear hearing aids because I was like, I ain't wearing hearing aids. I was like, till at least I'm like 45 or something. But in time, I started getting more and more social anxiety. I started getting like insecure to go places, and social situations were just awkward because like people would make a punchline or something, and I would just start to laugh awkwardly because I didn't want to make them repeat the same punchline over and over and over, right? So it sucked because I didn't want to be like, I wasn't trying to be fake or phony or nothing like that, but at the same time, like I felt a burden on myself for always trying to make people repeat things over and over and over. So long story short, one day my dad came into town because I just had my son. My dad lives in another state. I just had my son, so he came to see my son, and he's like, we're going to go get you hearing aids, right? So he took me to a little kiosk inside of Sam's Club where they would just do some free hearing aid tests. And he's like, we're just going to get your hearing check, kind of see where you're at. We'll go from there. And because at this point, it's really hard for me to hear on the phone too. So we go to the kiosk, and the guy is sitting in the booth to give me my test, and I'm looking at him waiting to start. And he's like, you know, like, let's go, or, you know, we started. And I was like, wait, the test started? I had no idea that the test started. So he starts going through all these different noises, and I could only hear a couple of them, the low ones that are like, you know, those noises. So those are the only ones I could hear. And so he comes into the booth and he goes, this is the worst that I've ever seen in someone your age. He's like, you don't have to come to me. He's like, I don't care where you go, just go get help. And then he starts talking to me about these studies where hearing loss is linked to dementia and later life and stuff like that. So at this point, I knew it was probably a good decision to go get some hearing aids, right? So I went to a hearing specialist later on, and the hearing specialist did my hearing, and they said pretty much the same thing. They said my hearing is just shot. You know, they said I have 10% left in this ear, 15% left in this ear. And I went to a couple different specialists to go get a second and third opinion, said the exact same thing. So at this point, I knew I had to do something. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll wear hearing aids. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'm probably never going to wear them because, you know, I was like, I only wear them when I really need to. Like if I'm going to a conference or a meeting or something like that. And times where I really need to hear, the only times I wear them, because I was feeling like I was thinking I was going to feel very, very self-conscious about having to wear hearing aids in my ear, especially being bald and, you know, not being able to have hair to cover it up or something like that, right? So anyway, so after that, the doctors told me that I wasn't even a candidate for hearing aids because my hearing was too shot. How it kind of works is the cochlea is kind of shaped like a snail. On the outside, on the tip of my thumb, if you can kind of picture that, the outside is where your high frequencies are, and as you go lower and lower, you start getting into lower and lower frequencies. Now, my hearing was shot. This is why they said it couldn't have been due to music, by the way, because there's too much damage. So if it was due to music, it would have clipped off a little bit of the top, and I would have lost a little bit of high frequencies. But I lost all of my highs and my mids. So the only thing I could hear, or the only things I could hear were vowels. So I couldn't hear any consonants anymore. So, and consonants is what makes speech intelligible. So it was a problem because it's the worst that it got. They said after about 7 years of not being able to hear those sounds, it would end up chronic, and I would never get them back in my speech. Not in my hearing per se, but in my speech. So they said that it was imperative that I go right away to get my cochlear implant surgery. So they talked me into it. And I was like, okay, well, I started kind of weighing it out. I was like, well, it's hard to function socially. And I started kind of coming to terms with it. I'm like, well, I mean, I'm getting older and I don't really care as much about being cool no more. I got my wife and my son and, you know, and all this. So I was like, I got my family. So I was like, I'm just going to go for it. So the surgery itself was, I think it was around 280,000, something like that. So it was really expensive. And I was like, there's no way I could afford that. So I tried getting my insurance to cover it. And the insurance just wouldn't cover it. They just said that it's something they wouldn't cover. So I started fighting with the insurance company over and over and over for a long time. I mean, I kept escalating when people couldn't help me. I was like, give it to somebody that can help me, and, you know, kept escalating the call. And finally, they agreed to pay for pretty much all of it besides about $5,000. So that was good. But I still didn't have $5,000, right? So I contacted the state, see if the state could help to help out with it. And same kind of process. They weren't going to do it at first. I kept kind of pushing and pushing. And then finally they said that they'd cover some of that. So it only really cost me only a couple $1,000s for the surgery, which is a blessing really when you think about it. So now getting the surgery was, I didn't really know what to expect. I never even seen a cochlear implant until they said that I needed one. So getting the surgery, what they do is they kind of carve a pocket in your skull. First, let me tell you what it looks like. So there's an internal component and an external component. And I'll show you the external component in a little bit. But the internal component goes inside, right? So they carve a little pocket in your skull. Now the thing kind of looks like, I want to say like this, I can't really do it, but at the top, I only have one hand, but at the top there's a little magnet, right? Right underneath that, there's like a rectangle chip, and then, and this is in like silicone or something like that. Some sort of thing that looks like that at least. And then there's electrodes underneath. There's like, I think 2. And so these electrodes go into your cochlea. So what they do is they carve the pocket here, put the component inside, and then they go through your facial nerves, because if they hit your facial nerves, then you'll end up paralyzed in your face. So they'll go through your facial nerves and put the electrodes inside of your cochlea, and then it kind of functions like the hair follicles that are inside of your cochlea, but those hair follicles are damaged or non-functioning in people with hearing loss. So it goes inside there, but in reality, you have thousands of hair cells, right, that function for hearing. And in the cochlear, or in the cochlear implant, they only have like 12 channels. So it's not the exact same as natural hearing, but it definitely helps a lot, right? So got the surgery. The pain wasn't too bad. I think I don't remember how long the surgery was, maybe like 5 hours or so. Woke up, no pain really. I was, all doped up on meds, so wasn't too bad. The next day, I woke up and I still wasn't in any pain at all. But the following day, I woke up with intense vertigo. So if you don't know what vertigo is, it's like intense dizziness. So I remember having, even with my eyes closed, the room would be spinning and just constantly spinning, like over and over and over and over and over, right? And it was so bad to the point where I couldn't even get up to pee. So I know this is TMI, but I actually had a cup that I would just have to pee in because there was no way I was going to make it to the bathroom, right? And no, I do have a better aim than David Wood in Islamicize Me. So for those of you that's seen that, no, but anyways, it was really bad for a few days like that. And then after that, I still didn't experience any pain. So all in all, I didn't really experience pain, just a lot of weird things, like weird sensations and like buzzing and stuff like that. The only thing that was very annoying is it felt like with somebody, if you get water stuck in your ear and you can't get it out, or someone has their finger in your ear, it felt like that 24/7. So the whole time I just wanted to like hit my head to try to make it, loosen and stuff like that, but it wouldn't loosen. So that part was annoying, but other than that, it wasn't too much pain. So after the surgery, I waited about 1 month or maybe 2 months because they have to wait for you to heal before they put on the external component and then start you up again, right? So here is like kind of a generic model of the external component. So this part in the front goes on your ear, right? Hooks on here. And then this part is a magnet. So it's the other magnet. So right when I put it on like that, then the device turns on. So wear it like this. I also have another one that's just this part, but it's thick. So it's nice because it's, you know, if I'm wearing sunglasses or glasses or something, or a hat or something, it's easier underneath there. But when you don't have a hat on, it's like this thick and it looks like some growth or something coming out of my head. So whenever I'm not wearing a hat, I'll probably wear this one so that way people don't stare at me wondering like what's growing out of my head, because they make it like the same as your skin color, or they try to match it. So anyways, so that's that. But it turns on as soon as you put the magnet on. And once I got it turned on, this is where it got really weird. You say, if you've ever kind of seen the videos, you may have seen the videos of the kids or something that's never been able to hear, and then they turn on the component and then they're able to hear their parents' voice for the first time, or even people that are slightly older, they'll start crying because they could hear for the first time. I was kind of expecting an experience like that, to be honest, but I didn't get an experience like that. Instead, when they turned it on, they were looking at me too. I felt bad because they're looking like, you know, smiling and stuff, waiting for me to say like, whoa, I can hear. But all I heard was a bunch of static, and a rumbly static is the best way to explain it. And I think what it was maybe the vents or the air conditioning or something like that maybe. But all the sounds that I couldn't hear came in as beeps and ticks and static. So I remember even when I went, made that noise. See, with this off, I can't even hear it. And I'll explain why I have it off in a sec. But I can't even hear what I'm doing when I go. But instead of hearing that noise how it should be, all I would hear is a beep. So it kind of sounded like, I guess life sounded like those old school dial-up modems where you have these beeps and ticks and, you know, and static and all that. That's how life kind of sounded, you know, so it was kind of weird. But when we left the hospital, I noticed that I heard the blinker for the first time in a long time, because I forgot that blinkers make noise. And when I heard it, I was like, what is that? And I'm looking around, right? I'm like, what is that? And my wife's like, it's the blinker, you know? And I was like, oh, it's the blinker. Same kind of thing when I got home. The microwave made noise. I'd be looking around, I'm like, what is that? So anything that I couldn't hear, it came in and I could hear it, but it didn't make sense. And I know that that's hard to understand if you haven't been through this experience, but the noise is just, they weren't intelligible. I don't know how to explain it. It's really weird. But yeah, I guess the only way for me to say it is they didn't make sense. So after a few months, I started getting really discouraged because all I was hearing was this, and I was working hard at it. So essentially what you have to do is you have to train your brain to learn how to hear once again. So you have to focus on hearing things. And so I would be listening to podcasts and stuff through it. And what's dope about it, here's one of the perks, is that you can stream directly to it. So I was listening to like podcasts and stuff like that. So we'll go here, but there's no noise on the outside. The reason why is because the cochlear, it's electric, or what it does is it takes sound waves and converts them into electrical currents. And so I'm hearing through electrical currents, and so other people can't hear it, in other words. So it's just silent. So I can hold my thing up to you and you would hear it, but it'd be really loud inside of my brain. But anyways, so yeah, so where was I? Oh yeah, so all these sounds I couldn't hear were like that. And so after a few months, I started getting discouraged because I was like, I'm never going to be able to, this just isn't going to work for me. I've read some horror stories of people who's got it and hated it because it never worked for them. And I was like, I'm going to just be one of those people. You know, I was really discouraged. And then after about maybe 6 months or so, I started being able to hear tone underneath the static. So even when I was listening to my podcast, I started hearing a little bit of a tone of their voices underneath this kind of staticky robotic voice. It kind of sounded like a monotone robot with static, right? So over time, I was able to get more and more of that tone. And then after that, it just kept getting better from there. I started being able to hear more and more tone. And then I started being able to, I finally got to a point where things sounded normal to me, you know? And so they don't really know if what I hear is like how you guys hear, or, you know, because it sounds normal to me now, or if my brain just got used to it, you know, my nervous system. And I'm assuming that it's my nervous system that got used to it and thinks that things sound normal, even though they probably still sound robotic or what, I don't really know. But yeah, it's just kind of a wild experience in that sense. And so when it's just interesting how our bodies can just warp and relearn something else like that, So anyways, I remember like after all this is going on, so now I've had the implant for about 2 years, by the way, and things sound pretty much normal, but I know that things aren't quite normal. And the reason why I know that is because I don't hear very well accents or tone or pitch, stuff like that. And I can mix up noises very easy. So if it's like my son screaming or even like my son and my wife talking, since they have like, high voices, they sound the same to me a lot of the time, and it's hard for me to distinguish. And kind of an unfortunate thing about it, even though I'm not complaining because I can hear now, a lot better, but an unfortunate thing about it is I can't hear direction. So I'll never be able to get that back either. So I can't hear direction or distance. So if someone comes up behind me and yells my name, I'm looking everywhere because I have no idea where they're coming from, right? So that's what makes it kind of hard. I think if I could hear direction, I'd probably be able to pinpoint their voices easier and it would make sense, but I'll never get that direction back. So that's kind of one of the unfortunate parts, but it's a small price to pay for the kind of life-changing experience you go through to be able to hear again, right? And so I feel blessed to be born in a time where I can get something like this, because I think it was about 6 months before I got this surgery. I got my LASIK. I actually got PRK surgery, but it's kind of like LASIK. So it was like the same year, and I got new eyes and new ears. You know what I mean? So that was dope. So a lot of people asked me after this. They're like, I know this had to been devastating because they know how much I love music. Like, I know this had to been devastating. How does this affect your relationship with God? And, do you still believe in God and this and that? And to be honest with you, like, it never really affected my faith. And the reason why I think that is because I didn't grow up in a church going home, and I didn't really hang out with a lot of Christians, right? So I didn't have this expectation that, or for me, actually, it's actually when I read the Bible, like I couldn't find this expectation that some people have where they think that once you convert to Christianity, your life is going to be all peaches and roses and stuff like that, right? Like when I look at the people in the Bible, just about like all of them almost, they had like some of the worst lives ever, right? Like including Jesus himself, and so you have like Paul the Apostle and Moses, and I mean, it doesn't really matter who you go to. Job, like there's not this correlation that you become a Christian or you live a good life and things just automatically you're going to have an awesome life. It's not like that. Like I always knew that I could be prone to suffering because I'm like, none of us are immune to it. If Christ himself isn't immune to it, then I'm definitely not immune to it, right? So that part didn't bother me. What I kind of noticed too was like, I kind of refer back to, I think Paul, it's in maybe 2 Corinthians 12:7 through 9, I believe. Let me see, actually, I think I might. 2 Corinthians. Yeah, so it is, so Paul writes here, he says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness. I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Now I know I stuttered all over that. I wasn't the kid that, when you called on in class, he was the one that was always stuttering and stuff like that. That was me because I hated reading in class. But anyways, I kind of relate to that, and so I trust God in this kind of time. Like, I realize that I don't know the reason for this. And if it is to humble me, then that's fine because this is a humbling process, but that's fine. So there's a reason for it. And I don't take it too personal because I know that this life is not all about me, right? That's like never the message that I took from the Bible or anything like that either. I realized that God has control over and sovereignty over this entire universe, right? So this life, when things happen, he allows them to happen for a reason. And I have no reason to think that God's going to make everything great just for me, right? And so I don't know the purpose why I lost my hearing, and I may never know the reason, you know. And it could be to benefit me, or it could be to benefit others. And, you know, I mean, it could even be simple as somebody watches this video and they come to Christ because they realize that, you know, we're going to have hardships, and that's what was keeping them away from Christ, you know. So it could be something simple like that. The way I look at it is like any true belief system has to correspond with reality. And the reason why I believe Christianity is true is because it does correspond with reality. And it's realistic when it says, in this life, when Jesus says, in this life, you will have troubles, right? So you have trials and tribulations. So because of that, I didn't have these expectations that would lead me to abandon faith or anything like that just because of this, you know. So those are just some thoughts that I had about my surgery. If you or anybody else that you know has had a cochlear implant, or you're thinking about getting one, or you need one, or anything like that, go ahead and write your story or your questions or comments or anything like that down below, and I'll try to give any advice that I can. And also what I say is that this is going to be Power Hour, so for the next hour, I'll be responding to every single comment that I can get to within that hour. So even if you don't have a comment specifically about this, go ahead and leave a question or comment or something like that, and I'll do my best to get to all of them. And last thing is, if you guys are on my Patreon, I really appreciate it. The support really helps, so that way I can continue to put out more videos. There's a whole lot of videos I want to get to. I just don't have the time to do them because I have to, you know, continually work on a whole bunch, you know, work a bunch of jobs and stuff like this, just so that way I can provide for my family. But with Patreon support, it will kind of alleviate some of that tension, and then that way I can spend more time getting out these videos. So if you're in a position where you're able to support me on Patreon, check out that link down in the description, and it would be greatly appreciated. So that's all I got for you guys. Appreciate your time. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.